Hello and welcome. On the news, we have Bangladesh clashes injure dozens as students protest job quotas. Trump warmly welcomed at RNC first appearance since incident. Judge dismisses Trump document case. Special counsel to appeal. CIA leader says Hamas's leaders pressured by commanders to end war, and Romania to call 500 bears to control overpopulation. Police fired tear gas and charged with batons during violent clashes between protesters rallying against quotas for government jobs and a pro-government student body, leaving no less than 100 people injured, police and students said. The quota system reserves over half of well-paid civil service posts, totaling hundreds of thousands of government jobs for precise groups, including children of fighters in the country's 1971 War of Independence from Pakistan. On Monday, the violence erupted at campuses including Jahangirnagar University in Sabah outside the capital Dhaka, where the protesters were demanding an end to the quota for family members of people who fought in the war. Police and witnesses said hundreds of anti-quota protesters and students supporting the ruling Awami League party fought for hours on Monday on the Dhaka University campus, throwing rocks, fighting with sticks and beating each other with iron rods. The quota system also reserves government jobs for women, disabled people and ethnic minority groups. The system was halted in 2018, which drew similar protests, but last month the High Court ruled for the 30% quota for veterans' descendants to be restored. That stoked new protests, with demonstrators backing the 6% quota for disabled people and ethnic groups, but not for the descendants of the Independence War heroes. Last week, the Supreme Court suspended the High Court's order for 4 weeks, and the Chief Justice asked the protesters to return to their classes. The Supreme Court said it will decide on the issue after 4 weeks, and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said the issue was in the hands of the top court. Over 50 people were treated overnight at Emin Medical College Hospital close to Jahangirnagar University, said Ali bin Sulaman, a medical officer at the hospital. He said at least 30 of them suffered pellet bullets. According to reports, Abdullahil Kafi, a senior police official, set fire tear gas and blank routes as the protesters attacked the police. He said up to 15 police officers and more than 100 students were wounded in the clashes in Dhaka. Hasina held on to power in the January election that was boycotted by the major opposition party and its allies due to her refusal to step down and hand over the administration to a caretaker government to oversee the elections. Her party favors keeping the quota for the families of the 1971 war heroes. The Awami League, under the leadership of her father Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, led the war with the help of India. All the major political parties in Bangladesh have student wings that are active across South Asian nation. The protesters accused the Bangladesh Chhatra League, a student wing of Hasina's Awami League, of attacking their peaceful protests. On US 2024 election, Donald Trump has received a hero's welcome at the Republican National Convention, the ex-president's first public appearance since he closely survived an attempted assassination. On Monday, Trump arrived at the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to an ecstatic reception 2 days after he was hit in the air by a would-be assassin's bullet during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Republican delegates stood and cheered as Trump entered the stadium to the sound of country music, Starley Greenwood singing "God Bless the USA." Trump, who appeared visibly moved, did not address the convention but smiled and waved to the crowd as supporters chanted "Fight, fight," and pumped their fists, a reference to the former president's deviant reaction in the moments after he was shot. After surveying the crowd, Trump took a seat in a VIP box with some of his children and his newly announced vice presidential running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Multiple speakers addressed Saturday's attack on Trump, who has credited God was saving his life, some of them invoking religious imagery. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott told the crowd, "Our God still saves, he still delivers, and he still sets free." Because on Saturday the devil came to Pennsylvania holding a rifle, but an American lion got back on his feet and he rode. Other speakers focused on the economy, the official theme of the evening, including Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who said Trump will restore a rip-roaring economy that lifts up all Americans. Trump, who scored a major legal win hours before his appearance when a Florida judge dismissed one of 3 pending criminal cases against him, is due to formally accept the Republican nomination on Thursday, setting up a rerun of the 2020 contest against Democratic President Joe Biden in November. Trump has signaled that unity will be a key theme of the 4-day event, according to a news report on Sunday, that he will deliver a whole different speech than the one he had originally planned. The attack on Trump has triggered widespread calls for resetting the U.S. acrimonious politics, with both Trump and Biden calling on Americans to put political divisions aside and come together. Still in the United States and on judicial matters, on Monday, a federal judge dismissed the classified documents case against Donald Trump, a shock ruling that clears away one of the main legal challenges facing the former president. District Judge Aileen Cannon, in a 93-page ruling, said the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith violated the Constitution. She did not rule on whether Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents was proper or not. The ruling by Cannon, a judge Trump appointed in 2020, comes on the first day of the Republican National Convention, and as the nation reels from the failed attempt on Trump's life over the weekend, even though a trial before the presidential election was considered highly unlikely. Many legal experts have viewed the classified document case as the strongest one of the 4 cases that were pending against the former president. Trump on Truth Social said the dismissal should be just the first step, as he called for other cases facing him also to be dismissed, claiming that the charges were political attacks. In a statement on Monday evening, Peter Carr, spokesperson for the special counsel's office, said the Justice Department has approved plans to appeal. Smith had charged Trump last year with taking classified documents from the White House and resisting the government's attempt to retrieve the materials. He pleaded not guilty. In a separate criminal case brought by Smith against Trump in Washington, D.C., the special counsel was pursuing federal charges stemming from Trump's attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Trump also faces a state-level election subversion case in Georgia, and he was convicted of state crimes in New York earlier this year for his role in a hush money payment scheme before the 2016 poll. Trump's efforts to dismiss the case under the appointments clause was seen as a long shot, as many special counsels, even during his presidential administration, were run the same way. But the fringe argument gained steam when Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas threw his support behind the theory, writing in a footnote in the High Court's presidential immunity decision that there are serious questions whether the Attorney General has violated that structure by creating an office of the special counsel that has not been established by law. Those questions must be answered before the prosecution can proceed. Still, Cannon held a hearing on the issue many weeks ago, pushing attorneys to explain exactly how Smith's investigation into Trump was being funded. The judge's questions were so pointed that special counsel attorney James Pierce argued that even if Cannon were to throw out the case due to an appointments clause issue, the Justice Department was prepared to fund Smith's cases through trial if needed. Cannon said in her order that the special counsel's position effectively usurps Congress' important legislative authority by giving it to the head of a department, DOJ, in this case, to appoint such an official. Away from the United States, now to Israel-Gaza war, the CIA has evaluated that the leader of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, is coming under rising pressure from his own military commanders to accept a ceasefire deal and end the war with Israel. CIA Director Bill Burns told a closed-door conference on Saturday, according to reports. Sinwar, the major architect of the October 7th massacre in Israel, is not concerned with his mortality, but is facing pressure about being blamed for the enormity of the suffering in Gaza, Burns said at the conference, according to the report. U.S. intelligence officials believe Sinwar is hiding in the tunnels beneath his birthplace, Khan Younis, in Gaza, and is the major decision maker for Hamas on whether to accept a deal. Burns, who for months has conducted feverish negotiations as the Biden administration's point person, said it was incumbent on both the Israeli government and Hamas to take advantage of this moment more than 9 months since the war started to reach a ceasefire. But the internal pressure Sinwar is now facing is fresh in the past 2 weeks, including the calls from his own senior commanders who are tiring of the fight, Burns said, according to the attendee, who was granted anonymity to discuss the off-the-record conference. The CIA director was speaking at the annual Allen and Company's summer retreat in Sun Valley, Idaho, sometimes called the summer camp for billionaires because of its glitzy guest list of tech moguls. The growing pressure on Sinwar comes as Hamas and Israel have agreed to a framework deal that President Joe Biden laid out at the end of May. Burns had just returned from his newest journey last week to the Middle East to try to further the negotiations over a Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal, meeting with mediator counterparts from Qatar and Egypt, as well as Israel's head of foreign intelligence. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, is also facing massive domestic pressure to strike a deal that will bring home the remaining hostages held in Gaza. Thousands of Israeli protesters regularly take to the streets of Tel Aviv, demanding the government focus on the return of hostages rather than the military campaign. Still ahead, Romania's government has more than doubled the number of bears that park rangers can legally kill, approving the culling of closely 500 bears this year following a deadly attack on a hiker that caused a nationwide outcry. On Monday, in an emergency meeting of Parliament authorities, the law adopted the culling of 481 bears in a bid to control overpopulation in the protected species, a figure that is more than twice last year's total of 220 bears culled. As well as adopting the new legislation, the Parliament held a moment of silence in memory of the 19-year-old hiker who was mauled to death last week on a popular trail in Romania's Carpathian Mountains. Marcel Ciucalacu, Romania's Prime Minister, had called lawmakers back from the summer recess to attend the emergency session of Parliament. According to the country's Environment Ministry, bears have killed 26 people and extremely wounded 274 others over the last 20 years in Romania. The ministry estimates there are up to 8,000 bears in the country, which is Europe's hugest population of brown bears outside Russia. Environmental groups denounce the new measure. Wildlife experts say the animals that cause problems, dubbed trash bin bears in Romania, will continue to scavenge in cities as urban sprawl eats into their natural habitat and as climate change limits their food sources. World Wildlife Fund WWF biologist Colin Arden said, according to reports, that the law solves absolutely nothing, arguing that the focus should be shifted towards prevention and intervention. According to WWF, the improved call will not solve the problem in Romania unless measures are put in place to keep bears away from the communities, waste management is improved, and people are prevented from feeding the bears. On more stories on climate crisis, Russia's temperatures surge as heat wave hits Siberia. As summer extends in the northern hemisphere, exceptionally hot weather has arrived in Russian Siberia, with temperatures rising above 30 degrees Celsius in the city of Novosibirsk. Fountains, beaches, and riverbanks have become popular spots for people seeking relief from the heat. At Novosibirsk Zoo, many animals sought refuge in their enclosures, while the polar bears enjoy the park's pools. Rescuers in the city were on high alert since the beginning of the swimming season. 48 people, including 16 children, have drowned, according to local reports. This number has doubled compared to last year. Rescuers have been dispatched to waterfronts as is residents during the heat wave. A state of emergency, meanwhile, was declared in the southern Russian region of Krasnodar Krai, where more than 500 tourists were evacuated due to raging wildfires at a local resort. Now at least 4 dead as DRC fighting persists despite truce. Local sources said according to report, 2 children and 2 teenagers have been killed in a bombardment in the Democratic Republic of Congo DRC. On July 5th, the United States announced a humanitarian truce between Kinshasa and the M23 rebel group operating in Eastern DRC. It was supposed to last until July 19th, but fighting broke out on Friday. A spokesperson for one of the armed groups supporting the DRC forces said the fighting happened 70 kilometers 43 miles northwest of the North Kivu provincial capital, Goma. By Monday, the fighting had reached the town of Bairumana, about 15 kilometers, 9.3 miles west of Goma, where the deadly bombardment hit. According to Innocent Muitihofu Mombara, a local civil society leader, said the death included 2 children from the same family. The 4 victims were aged 2, 3, 16, and 18, Mombara added. A mother and her 4-year-old child were among the wounded, said Police Commissioner Pauline Ilunga, claiming that the shell had come from the hills where the M23 is. Confirming the deaths of 4 people in the attack, report from the hospital said 5 more had been admitted with severe injuries. Since 1996, the DRC has been facing political instability and armed violence, with approximated 6 billion people killed since the conflict started. The M23, backed by units of the Rwandan army, had seized vast swaths of territory in North Kivu, going so far as to nearly completely encircle Goma since the end of 2021. According to Human Rights Watch report, M23 allegedly executed scores of villagers and militia members between November 2022 and April 2023, burying them in mass graves in the village of Kinshishe, North Kivu. The report says that M23 has committed unlawful killings, rape, and other war crimes since late 2022, exacerbating the dire humanitarian crisis in the country. A total 171 civilians were executed in the last 10 days of November alone, according to the United Nations Human Rights Office. The M23 and the Rwandan army at the end of June seized numerous towns in Lubero territory in the north of North Kivu, following the fall of the Congolese army and its auxiliary militias. Closely 50 soldiers were sentenced to death in the following days for fleeing the enemy. Still in Africa, Ivory Coast launches malaria vaccine drive for kids. On Monday, health workers in Ivory Coast started vaccinations against malaria, the leading cause of death of children in the country, as the government added the malaria vaccine to the list of routine vaccinations for children. The West African country became the first to begin rolling out the latest shot aiming for malaria in an effort that targets to cover almost 250,000 children under 2. Health Minister Per Demba, at a ceremony to mark the launching of the vaccination campaign, said, "This decision shows the engagement of the government, who make it a point of honor to invest in the health of our children, our most precious treasures. We want to ensure their protection and their well-being because they are the future of our country," he added. The 3-dose vaccine known as R21/Matrix-M was developed by Britain's Oxford University and was authorized by the World Health Organization, WHO, last October. In 2021, a different malaria vaccine called Mosquirix was endorsed by the WHO, but it needed 4 doses and protection decreased within months. India's Serum Institute has already made 25 million doses of the Oxford vaccine and says it plans to make at least 100 million every year. Malaria most often attacks children under 5 and pregnant women, and over 94% of the world's approximately 249 million malaria cases and 608,000 deaths every year are in Africa. Acting WHO representative in Ivory Coast, Dr. Fatim Tal, said at the ceremony that the vaccine will guarantee without any doubt that our children will survive not just past their first birthday, but will from now on reach adulthood in good health. But malaria vaccines don't stop the disease's transmission, and experts have long warned that preventive measures like insecticide spraying and the use of bed nets will remain critical. In part 2, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria, but after this moment, don't go anywhere. You're welcome back. Let's continue with Zuma Nigeria, and we begin with judicial matters in Nigeria. Court stops Ado Bayero, 4 others from emir duties. On Monday, a Kano State High Court granted a permanent injunction preventing the 15th emir of Kano, Alhaji Aminu Ado Bayero, and 4 other dethroned emirs of Bichi, Rano, Gaya, and Karaye from parading themselves as emirs. The applicants are the Attorney General of Kano State, the Speaker, Kano State House of Assembly, and the Kano State House of Assembly, who through their counsel, Ibrahim Isa Wangida Esquire, filed a motion ex parte dated May 27th. The applicants sought a court order restraining Ado Bayero and 4 other dethroned emirs of Bichi, Rano, Gaya, and Karaye from parading themselves as emirs. The respondents are Ado Bayero, Alhaji Nasiru Ado Bayero Bichi Emir, Dr. Ibrahim Abubakar II, Emir of Karaye, Alhaji Kabiru Muhammad Inwa, Emir of Rano, and Alhaji Ali Ibrahim Gaya, Emir of Gaya. Others are the Inspector General of Police, Director of State Security Service, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, and Nigerian Army. Justice Amina Adamu Aliyu, delivering the judgment, held that the Kano State House of Assembly had powers to amend and propose a bill for the peace and good governance of a state under Section 4, Rule Section 6 and 7, Subsection B, and of the 1999 Constitution as amended. The code also restrained the police and other security agencies from violating, disobeying, or tampering the Kano State Emirate Repeal Law 2024, holding that the first respondent legal counsel withdrawal without notice to other parties is unethical, and that moving their motion is as good as not filing it since it has been abandoned. The judge said the act of the 6th to 9 respondents for smuggling the first respondents Kano after the enactment of the Emirate Repeal Law 2024 disregards what they have sworn for the protection of life and property. Counsel to the applicant, Ibrahim Isa Wangida, earlier urged the court to discount the respondent's affidavit of fact under Order 39 Rules 1 and 2 of the court. Counsel to Ado Bayero, Abdul Muhammad's son, told the court that they have an affidavit of fact dated July 3, 2024, attached with a notice of appeal and a motion of stay of proceedings. He urged the court to stay of proceedings pending the hearing and determination of the motion at the appeal court. And finally, on the news on economic matters, food prices drive Nigeria's inflation to 40.8%. In June 2024, Nigeria's inflation rate increased to 40.8%, the highest level in over a year, driven by rising food prices. This represents a 0.24 percentage point surge from the 33.95% recorded in May 2024. The rate at which prices of goods and services rise in the country has continued to rise as newest data by the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) showed inflation rates for June increased to 34.91% as food inflation soared further to 40.89%. This was higher than analysts' approximate of 34% inflation rate for June, as estimates of month-on-month headline inflation rose by 17 basis points to 2.31% compared to May addition of 2.14% month-on-month. On a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate was 11.40 percentage points higher compared to June 2023, when it stood at 22.79%. The month-on-month inflation rate also spiked to 2.31% in June 2024, up from 2.14% in May. The NBS attributed the hike in inflation to the increasing cost of food, transportation, and housing. Food inflation alone reached 40.87% in June, the highest on record. The June 2024 headline inflation rate showed an addition of 0.24% points when compared to the May 2024 headline inflation rate. On a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate was 11.40 percent points higher compared to the rate recorded in June 2023, which was 22.79%. This shows that the headline inflation rate year-on-year basis added in the month of June 2024 when compared to the same month in preceding year, June 2023. Furthermore, on a month-on-month basis, the headline inflation rate in June 2024 was 2.31%, which was 0.17% higher than the rate recorded in May 2024, 2.14%. The latest data showed that in month of June 2024, the rate of increase in the average price level is higher than the rate of increase in the average price level in May 2024. The rise in food inflation on a year-on-year basis was caused by increases in prices of the following items: millet, whole grain, gari, guinea corn, bread and cereals class, yam, water yam, cocoa yam, potatoes, yam and other tubers class, groundnut oil, palm oil, oil and fat class, and catfish dried fish sardine, and mudfish. On a month-on-month basis, food inflation soared by 2.55% relative to the 2.28% month-on-month recorded in the earlier year. A recap of major stories says Bangladesh clashes injure dozens as students protest job quotas. Trump warmly welcomed at RNC first appearance since incident. Judge dismisses Trump document case, special counsel to appeal. CIA leader says Hamas leaders pressured by commanders to end war, and Romania to call 500 bears to control overpopulation. And that's all in the news. Enjoy the rest of your day.